Hello, everyone. Great to check back in with you all. If you're anything like me at the moment, I don't quite know what day it is. So if nothing else, we are here to let you know that it is Tuesday, which means it is time for episode 11 of Tennis Tuesday. We went from thinking we might have a little bit of a lighter week this week to Roger Federer tweeting and our whole game plan changing. I am Blair Henley, joined by Nick McCarvel. And Nick, not a lighter week. We have a full docket on today's show.
Blair, we certainly do. You guys, welcome to Tennis Tuesday. Blair, I love that you clarified what day it is of the week because I need that as well. It is indeed Tuesday, and we've got a great show, you guys. We're going to be talking about what Blair mentioned, Roger Federer, and tweeting out about the potential of a WTA and ATP tour merger. We're also going to talk about where the tour relief funds currently stand. Also about the many streaming options of pro tennis going on right now, including the virtual event in Madrid. We've got your responses in our YourServe segment as far as how that WTA ATP merger can best happen. And Blair, we are most excited about this to say today we're going to be joined by the one, the only Mary Carillo, which we are, both of us, I think, are very excited about on a lot of levels. And I think MC is going to have some hashtag thoughts for us.
I would be very disappointed if she didn't, but we know what to expect from Mary Carillo, which brings us, before we get to all of that, to our wellness check. What would a week be without checking in on each other? Nick, how are you?
I'm all good. 2 thumbs up. I wasn't sure what day it was either. And so thank you for clarifying that. No, good. Today I'm thankful. This weekend, I was thankful for being in Montana, a lot of outdoor time, some hiking happening. And I've gotten the chance to do some great figure skating work in the last few days. Spoke with Nathan Chen last week for an article. He's a world champ. And then I also spoke with Mirai Nagasu, who's an Olympic medalist. She was the triple axel jumper at Pyeongchang a couple years ago. So that's been fun to stay linked in with the figure skating world. And what about in your world?
Well, before I talk about that, I just want to say, Nick, everything I know about skating, I know because of you. So thank you for enlightening. I'm sure it's not just me. I'm sure it's many tennis fans who follow you on your various social outlets, and you've educated us all. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
In terms of my life, there's really nothing new to report. I will say, to keep up with your snappy polos, I did do a button down today, but I again am wearing sweatpants, so it's business on the top, definite party or lounge on the couch on the bottom. Again, in lack of any personal news, I just want to note that I got a chuckle out of Stefanos Tsitsipas's birthday present for Nick Kyrgios. I'm just going to throw this out. It made me smile this morning. If you missed it, Steph went ahead and posted Nick Kyrgios's phone number on his Instagram profile. He did it in the style of, I think it's called Dude with Sign. It's an Instagram account that has millions of followers. Steph happens to look like Dude with Sign. So in a bit of a parody, he's holding up a piece of cardboard with Nick Kyrgios's phone number on it. And Kyrgios,
Nick
of course,
Kyrgios wasn't very happy about that, Blair.
No, I mean, he commented, I feel like sort of in good fun, but then on his Insta story, he said, hey, seriously, guys, like I can't listen to music. I can't do anything on my phone because I just keep getting texts and calls and texts and calls. So most likely he's going to have to change his phone number, but their relationship just kind of makes me laugh. I mean, they give each other a hard time, but it seems like they can also have fun. So I'm just going to take that as my positive. That just made me smile.
I'm so glad you brought that up because it was the one thing this morning that I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And we didn't have it in our schedule for the show. Well done there. That was hilarious. And I do have to say, I have yet to text or call Nick Kyrgios, maybe after the show.
I mean, I'm definitely filing it away for reference just in case I ever need it. But that brings us, Nick, to takeaway time.
Yeah, certainly. And we go from Blair, sort of, we're laughing about and the fun piece of Tsitsipas and Kyrgios to a more serious note in the Player Relief Fund, which the tours had talked about, the players had talked about. Novak Djokovic had said that the top players wanted to give what they could to the players in the lower rung of the sport. We've talked about this in Tennis Tuesday past. But Blair, as you know, Dominic Thiem created new headlines over the weekend.
He got everyone talking for sure. And before I read his quote, I just want to go ahead and say, so it was given to an Austrian newspaper called Kron, which I'm sure I'm pronouncing wrong. Sorry to all the German speakers out there. So the question was, what was he responding to? Some said that this quote was in response to the Player Relief Fund, in which he would have owed, I believe, $30,000 as a top 5 player. And some said that he was responding to John Millman's tweet, which, in paraphrasing, if the concern is to help players ranked 250 to 700 in the world, why has it taken us so long to figure this out? So this is what Dami said. So no tennis player is fighting to survive, even those who are much lower ranked. None of them are going to starve. I don't really see why I should give such players money. I would rather give money to people or organizations that really need it. There are many, many players who don't put the sport above everything else and don't live in a professional manner. None of us top players got anything handed to us. We all had to fight our way up. I don't have the guarantee in any job that I will do well and earn lots of money. And then tennis Twitter went wild.
It certainly did in here. This is what I'd like to say first. Dominic Thiem speaks his mind, especially to the German-Austrian press. And so we have this relationship a lot of times with the players, and then we have the relationship with them in their national press. And so I have to say, well done to him for speaking his mind. Whether or not it was taken out of context, maybe we'll clear that up in the next few days, Blair. But he's got the right to his own opinion. I'm kind of split on it. I'm probably going to toe the party line here and say he's entitled to his own opinion. He can say whatever he wants to say. But also, Dami, come on. This is a drop in the bucket for you. So you've won the millions. Is it not helping a good cause to help these potentially future stars, great names in the game, be able to survive a global pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, I understand partially where he's coming from, because sure, there are players, and we talked about this, it was either last week or 2 weeks ago. I have seen for myself, there are players playing at those levels with those rankings that are playing just because they can play for fun. Their parents are supporting them. Absolutely, those players exist. However, and I actually spoke, we're going to hear a little bit from Stan Smith later on, but Stan Smith, who, got, I think, 5,000 pounds for winning Wimbledon in 1972, he was just saying that the guys today don't really realize how good they have it and don't realize that those guys, maybe not 700, but you have to have those guys coming up in order for tennis to be healthy and survive. So I think it's maybe just a perspective issue. He just maybe needs a slightly wider perspective on this particular topic.
It's also an interesting cultural discussion. He's saying that nothing was ever handed to him. That sounds to me very Austrian, very German. And not to say that we as Americans feel as though we can just get handed anything we want to make our careers happen. It's interesting, though, because Blair and I have been discussing, and I think a lot of you that watch Tennis Tuesday would know, it's not just the players that have been impacted by this time away from the tour. You've got chair umpires and officials and the medical teams and us freelancers, the journalists, the TV directors, the commentators. And then you think of at each of the venues, venue workers, people that are cleaning, serving food, doing operations, moving anything to make a tournament happen. So I do appreciate the focus on the players themselves, but they're not the only ones that have been impacted. I'm not asking for any handouts. It's just such a layered discussion. We're seeing this across the world right now in this global pandemic that it just adds that extra little ripple. And yeah, I think it ruffled a few feathers too.
a few. I appreciate, by the way, that Dustin Brown actually came out and tweeted about his experience living in a camper van, driving around Europe just to kind of try to make ends meet. Is his style one that we all sort of understand? No, but it's highly entertaining. And I am so glad that he's around and that he made it, I think, up to maybe top 70 at one point. So again, it may not happen as quickly as it does for some players. So I think there's definitely room to let players learn, grow, and make it to, top 100 when their game is ready. And we could, it could be a great story when somebody has a breakthrough at 30. That's fun too. It's not just the 18-year-olds. It's fun to kind of see how everyone has their own different path. So again, lots of layers.
Lots of layers, and I don't think this is the last we're going to hear of this.
No. And on switching gears on a much lighter note, the Mutua Madrid Open Virtual Pro officially kicked off on Monday, and kind of had to get it going. There were a few technical issues at the beginning, kind of trying to figure it out as they go. Nick, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, listen, there were some teething issues, right? And Blair and I are recording this on Monday afternoon. They were still dropping matches mid-match. There were interruptions. You couldn't hear the players. I think the commentators on the stream were talking 2, 3, 4 times more than they thought they would because they kept having to fill, something that Blair and I know too well. Trying to fill broadcast air is not an easy thing to do. But there's a lot of positive to be seen out of this. I love the initiative, one, just that it's happening. I loved this from Jeannie Bouchard and Donna Vekic, where they did an Instagram live of their match. So they were doing supplementary content, which is incredible. And then Feliciano Lopez created quite the stir. I couldn't tell if it was on purpose or not, by saying that Rafael Nadal had to withdraw from the event due to a back injury, which the internet seemed to take serious for a while. And Feli then said, no, guys, I was obviously joking. He's sitting on the couch playing video games. But I think that's in the spirit of what's happening. And I was actually chatting with a friend about, what's a sports void, or how do we best fill said void? And there's no right answer, but we have been talking about this event since it got announced a few weeks ago. And I just appreciate, no, it's not going to be perfect, Blair, but I just appreciate, obviously, that it's happening. And we get some banter from the players and watch some of them play this game well and some of them not play it as well.
Not so much. I loved Belinda Bencic posting a video of her walkout up the stairs of her house in full tennis gear. So there have been some really fun things that have come out of this. Yes, I think they've learned a lot. Would we rather hear more from the players and less from commentators? Yes. Are people saying it maybe shouldn't have been streamed on Facebook? Yes. So there are things I think that can be learned. I think it's a tennis world tour is the game. I've learned, thanks to people on Twitter. By the way, Matt Willis, at Matt Racket, is a great follow when it comes to the gaming stuff. I have learned more in the past week about gaming, or past couple of weeks, than I have certainly known up to this point. So I've learned a lot. I'm sure the organizers have learned a lot. But overall, it's given us something to watch, something to talk about, and something that's allowing players to interact in a social way, which I think is a net positive for sure.
And Blair, since you're the expert on all things Mario Kart, do you think you and I should create our own Mario Tennis tournament? Is that happening on Tennis Tuesday?
You know what? I am a huge proponent of Mario Tennis or Mario anything. In fact, I actually think that might have been fun for this because it might have just lightened it up a little bit. It took itself a little bit seriously at the beginning. So I love, anything that players want to do with Mario or Luigi or Yoshi for that matter, have at it. I would love it.
We should shout out Jeff Donaldson. Maybe he wasn't the first, but he suggested that as well. Mario Tennis. So maybe Tennis Tuesday will have a Mario Tennis spin-off tournament.
I'm sign me up. Not that I have a choice. I'm in. Let's go.
All right, well, let's go ahead and move on to our third and final topic on takeaway time. And Blair, you and I have been consuming in different ways, and I think a lot of you guys have. Tennis TV has done an incredible job at packaging and pushing out. I get the app notifications on my phone of what different matches they're streaming that day. I know that there's been more and more YouTube clips happening out there. I love this initiative too, Blair. from the ITF. They're opening up their archive really for the first time, extensive, expansive archive of matches from years past. I was just watching before we started Mark Philippoussis play Juan Carlos Ferrero on grass, Australia versus Spain from the 90s. Love this clip of Conchita Martinez and the Spanish team playing against a young Martina Hingis. Every Thursday on the ITF YouTube account, you can watch new Fed Cup and Davis Cup, well, new to you in their entirety, which is just another way. We're talking about, obviously, Madrid, but this is just another way, Blair, where we've got these different ways to consume tennis during this time.
Yeah, I'm all for the creativity that has come out of this. Silver linings, Nick, all about the silver linings. And speaking of which, this might be the silverest, the most silver lining of them all, a potential ATP-WTA merger. Last Wednesday, Roger Federer decided to just kind of float this idea on social media. And I actually love this paragraph from Steve Tigner at tennis.com. He said this so perfectly, so I'm just going to read what he said. Just wondering, Federer began, innocently enough, as if he were about to ask his 12.7 million Twitter followers for a rom-com recommendation. Instead, he dropped this surprise bombshell, quote, "Am I the only one thinking that now is the time for men's and women's tennis to be united and come together as one?" I think Reem Abdul and Ben Rothenberg described it as pseudo-casually dropped this on people, because obviously this Roger Federer did not wake up one morning and decide to tweet this unilaterally. Again, that set off a chain reaction in the New York Times. Christopher Clarey kind of wrote about the WTA's reaction, not necessarily a clear response as of right now, but he did write that Mickey Lawler, the WTA's president and its second-ranking executive behind Steve Simon, the chairman, has been a public proponent for united governance. Simon has yet to express views as clear or detailed as Andrea Gaudenzi, of course, the chairman of the ATP, but the WTA will be facing a significant financial shortfall if it's unable to stage its season-ending finals in Shenzhen, China this year. So I think there could be some great things to come out of this, Nick.
Well, I love that you brought that up, the reaction from the WTA. And we even had a Serena Williams deleted tweet amidst all of this. We're going to show you that screen grab as well. But let's get a little further insight. Simon Cambers is a colleague of ours. He works for ESPN, ATP Tennis Radio. His partner, Danielle Rossing, works for Forbes, CNN. They do incredible reporting on tennis year-round. Here's a little insight from Simon on this very topic.
Hello from the sunny south coast of Great Britain, and it's very nice to be with you. I'm sorry that Danielle's not with you tonight. She's having a few problems with her voice, but it was interesting listening to Andrea Gaudenzi on the ATP podcast, on the ATP Tennis Radio, where he started talking about closer alignment between the ATP and WTA. Now, obviously, he's just come into the role. And as a former player, he's well respected by the players, so he has their back. But he is immediately thinking of the future, thinking about how maybe the sport could be better off together. And 7 governing bodies together is never great. So I think if something good comes out of this pandemic, and tennis being down and out of action for several months, well, if the ATP and WTA could work together, then that's probably the best thing of all. So we'll see how that goes.
I think it's especially interesting that he's calling out Gaudenzi stepping into this new role. You mentioned Steve Simon hasn't been really outspoken about this, but this is going to be interesting to now see. It's almost like diplomatic ping pong. I would like to hear more voices from the women's side to understand exactly where we stand on this issue.
I mean, speaking of having a voice to kind of listen to or look at, one thing that I would love to come out of this, and people have talked about it, Darren Cahill, I believe, did a story with Reem Abdul about this particular subject and said it would be great to have a commissioner. And especially right now, I think people are looking for someone to get information from, and there are way too many options. So it would be great, in my opinion, to have kind of one person who's at the top of the pyramid. First off, I would love for just the rules to be the same. I would love for the tournament structure and the ranking structure to be the same, like things that help the fans. The tour is only as good as how much fans care about it. And I think anything that can help make that easier, please. Like even Novak Djokovic and Fabio Fognini were talking the other day on their Instagram Live about how they'd both be fine with on-court coaching. Why not? I mean, I know there are people who have very strong opinions on that particular thing, but I just think consistency would be helpful for everyone involved. So again, I feel like there would be some little steps that could be taken now. A merger is going to take time. That is a huge, there are so many moving pieces, but knowing that we're kind of on the right path here and some of those little baby steps could be taken maybe even before some of that structural change, I'm in.
This is a big topic, and we're going to continue the conversation throughout this Tennis Tuesday, including getting thoughts from you guys. YourServe, we're talking all things potential hypothetical merger, including one fan who said they think the potential tour should be called the Slay TP. We're going to find out who said that. But you guys, it's time. We're so excited. We're going to talk some merger with her as well. She has been a Grand Slam champion in mixed doubles. She is a champion of the broadcast booth in the Olympics, in tennis, in dog shows. She's one of our personal favorites, and she gave us a tour of what it's like in quarantine in the very house of Mary Carillo.
Hey, so Nick and Blair, I know you're going to say to me, so what have you been doing during the pandemic? Well, yeah, you can play some ping pong, that's always cool, and there's plenty of books to read, also cool, but the fact is I needed a new metal roof in my house. And my roof guy, because I got a roof guy, he said, hey, you cover Wimbledon, don't you? I said, yeah, I cover Wimbledon. He said, why don't we do something to the flat part of your roof? I said, all right, let's see what you're talking about. Here's what he's talking about. Okay, it's up here. These stairs. My guy made me Wimble roof. What do you think of that? Pretty good, huh? Look, I'm even growing a little ivy here in the corner. Yeah, guys, yeah. Okay, so it's not exactly regulation, and it's not exactly grass, but it's waterproof, which is really what you want in a Wimble roof. And it came out great. I got a net I'm gonna put up. It's beautiful, right? I think it came out pretty well. You know how the majors brag, well, we got roofs over the courts now. Big deal. I got a court on my roof.
In addition to all the other accomplishments and accolades that we've already talked about, she is a generous and encouraging supporter of the tennis media next gen, as it were. And as we just saw, she is the owner of a Wimble roof. Mary Carillo, thank you for joining us on Tennis Tuesday.
I am honored to be here. Love the graphics on your show. Love them. The first time I saw that was when you were doing your show out of Indian Wells. And yeah, you were holding up homemade graphics. It was outstanding. You guys, yes. You're both okay? You're doing all right?
You know what we've loved, Mary? We've loved, there are some silver linings to be drawn out of all the tough stuff that is happening in our world right now. But we have loved watching network TV use Tennis Tuesday graphics because it's happened out there. It has.
Copied you.
That's exactly right. And as I said, I mentioned that you have been so great to us and so encouraging to us. That brings me back to last year at Indian Wells when Nick and I first started doing this. And I am literally walking in to the complex, to the Indian Wells Tennis Garden. I'm on my phone. I've told Mary this, ordering dry shampoo. And who but Mary Carillo pops into my line of sight and says, Blair, I just got to say, I love what you and Nick are doing. And that is the first time we ever met. And it was great. And we so appreciate that.
I meant it. I'd never met you before, but I saw you. I recognized you. Yeah, I had to tell you. This stuff's important. And it's fun and it's entertaining and informative. And you two do a terrific job. I'm glad
we appreciate it. And this it's been a strange year for all of us, but maybe most of all for you, because you started the year not in Australia as you normally would have been, awaiting the arrival of grandchild baby Rhea, who is absolutely adorable. But then the season never really got going after that. What are you missing most about the sport right now?
Oh, you know what? You're right, Blair, because what happened was I was going to owe Tennis Channel a lot of work. And I knew it was going to get been a very busy season for me because I skipped 2 weeks of the Australian Open for them. And then I thought I was going to be at the Olympics with Nick in Tokyo this summer. That would have been a month. And so they had already scheduled me to do Eastbourne, right before Wimbledon, out of the LA studio, and then go right to Wimbledon for 2 weeks. And then I had to miss the Canadian Open. So I had to push it off on the back end. So I went from that thinking, how am I gonna pull this off, to what we've got now. So I am very lucky that I'm a grandmother, that happened towards the first week, the end of the first week of the Australian Open. I'm so lucky that my daughter and her husband and baby Rhea live down here, because it has been my absolute pleasure and salvation to be around this beautiful young life. I think I've sent you guys about 457 photos of my child, my grandchild.
Keep them coming.
So yeah, no, that's lovely, And the weird part about living in Florida, I've talked to Chris Everett, who lives down here, Martina, who lives down here. When you get a hurricane down here, and you're from Florida, Blair, you know this, you got no power, you got no internet, you got no air conditioning, it's beautiful where we are. It's beautiful down here. The Gulf of Mexico is a couple blocks away from me, so it all feels like it's fine out there. And then I put my mask on and go buy groceries. Strange times.
It really is. I mean, and I feel it here in Montana, which probably feels worlds away from Florida and from Texas, but it's a similar feeling here. Mary, I like that you mentioned Tokyo, because we were meant to go and be there for the summer. What's been the strangest part of all of this? I mean, you've worked in sports for so long. We've never seen a pandemic like this in modern sports. We've never seen a break from the tennis tour, and then the Olympics gets delayed. But from your point of view, what's been the strangest part of this whole thing?
I mean, every bit of it's been strange. And what's had to happen is that, I think everybody would have wanted, all the tournament directors and Tokyo, they would have wanted to be able to wait longer than they did, but they had to declare their decisions earlier than they wanted to. And I was on a call with, it was me and 169 other announcers for NBC for the Tokyo Games. And this was before they had called it off. And basically it was a conference call just saying, nothing's been called off yet, but it's very fluid. And I'm thinking to myself, what the, and like 3 days later, it got called off. So it's, and it's interesting, because I've done some work in recent weeks at Tennis Channel, be back again next week. We're doing a salute to the Australian, which I've missed in this year. But so right, but the night before we were going to go on, Lindsay Davenport texted me and said, "Do you think we're going to see any tennis in 2020?" Now here's Lindsay, who I love. She's got 4 kids. They've got season tickets to USC football. They go to all the hockey games. Their kids are I said to her, are you going to be comfortable taking your kids to a college football game this fall? And she's like, hell no. Like I said, well, yeah. You know what I mean? I won't feel safe that way. My son lives in New York, and he's an actor, and he hasn't been there for about almost 40 days now. And he's been told, try to stay out of there, till like July. So the fact that everything has frozen, everything has stopped. And sports, I think, it's going to be a very hard thing this year right now. It'll be interesting. I mean, do you guys like the idea of watching sporting events without fans?
I think people would take it if they could have it broadcast into their home right now. I certainly would love to see even the camera people put back to work. I think that would be nice for even some segments of sort of that tennis workforce. But I've talked to some people in broadcast, and even then, just to have kind of that broadcast product and what you miss out on in sponsors on the ground, I don't even know if that's financially feasible.
Right. Well, that becomes a question too. I mean, the big sports make their money from TV rights and sponsorship, and then everything, the tickets and sales at the games. And so something like the NFL, which is trying to go on without fans this Paul from every day I listen to. That business model works for the big sports. I'm not sure that tennis can really pull that. Really don't think so. And really, if you wanted to hold, say, the U.S. Open, you can't sell grounds passes, right? So that's gone. And you can't, if you have a food court, that's dangerous. And if you have a small food court, that's even more dangerous. Because more, you got to have bathrooms. So, all right, you got to keep some bathrooms attendants around. And but you don't want too many of them either. And then what do you sell every fourth seat? Do you stagger? I mean, everything is up in the air, it seems. But I'd be a little surprised if the U.S. Open happened. I'd be a little surprised if the French Open happened. I don't know. I'm not that optimistic.
Yeah, no, we've been discussing it, Mary.
By nature, Nick, as you know.
I know you are. We've been discussing this the last couple episodes of just, first Blair and I were giving like weekly updates of the schedule's now this, and tennis fans are so informed as far as how things are happening, and now it's looking very tough for the USTA to put the US Open on. The other thing, Mary, that's been making a lot of headlines is that one tweet by Roger Federer, which just kind of blew up the tennis world. And obviously Blair and I have been talking a lot about it this week.
What have you guys been saying about it? And then I'll chime in.
Well, we've been kind of towing the party lines. I would love to see the tours come together. I would love to see more unity in tennis. I know, though, and Blair knows this too, there's a lot to work through for these two tours to come together. A lot.
Right. I actually found Roger's tweet. It came up as, and I love Roger, but that seemed like such a disingenuous tweet. Is there anyone else that thinks it might, like, really, Rog? This is you're just throwing it out there. I do know that the WTA have been in talks. I do know that Steve Simon, the WTA guy, has been talking to the new guy, Gaudenzi, at the ATP. And if nothing else comes out of this, it sounds like finally the WTA is going to get rid of the way they designate their tournaments. The premiers, the premier mandatories, non-premier, but it's a really nice tournament. All those designations drove me nuts. I always got it wrong, too. I always and I would have the copy right in front of me, and it's premier, no, it's not. Oh, okay, well, whatever. It's important. There's a lot of good people here. Yeah. So they're going to adopt the men's. This is worth 1,000 points. This is a 500 tournament. This is a 250. So that's going to be happening. So at least there's something coherent about the two tours. And I'm glad to hear that. And it sounds like the talks have been earnest and respectful, but these are going to be turf wars any way you look at it.
Mary, you, I think, can give us an idea of the historical perspective as far as this goes. We saw you in your little video wearing your BJK shirt, which I, too, have one of those. You obviously know Billie Jean King well. She was the first person to kind of, if we're talking about floating this idea, she did more than float it. She really went hard, and it didn't happen in the 70s. So how big would it be for this to happen now?
Blair, not only did she float, before she floated the idea, I think she assumed it. The sport turns pro in 68, and she just assumed, all right, the men and the women are going to be together. And then as she reacted to Roger Federer's tweet and said, this is something I've wanted since the early 70s. The fact is, the men, and we're talking about men I really admire and respect, Arthur Ashe, Stan Smith, Billy said, why don't we join forces? And they said, no, we don't need you, basically. I mean, Billy was when the guys, they boycotted Wimbledon because Nicky Pilic didn't want to play Davis Cup for his country. And those guys didn't even like Nicky Pilic that much. But the solidarity, they said, we're boycotting Wimbledon. And Billy said, well, we'll boycott it too. The women will. And they said, no, you don't have to. You go ahead, go play on. I mean, yeah, of course it would be great. But I mean, this sport has been cobbled together year by year, piece by piece, and there's all kinds of silos. You guys know this as much as I do. There's all kinds of turf wars. It's like I picture, and there's 7 different entities, as you guys know, with the majors and the WTA, the ITF, the ATP. It's sort of like in The Godfather, the 5 families, like the 5 families, Nobody wants to give up, I don't know how much this is a film that's very important to the Carillo family. You got your Tattaglias, you got your Barzinis, you've got your Strachis and your Cuneos, and they all want a piece of the pie, whether it's racketeering or loan sharking or prostitution. But like everybody wants their piece. So the idea of showing up in some smoke-filled room, all the 7 families of tennis. and coming together. Am I over dramatizing what I feel this is going to look like, or are we all on the same? I would love to write the screenplay to this.
I mean,
everyone's going to have to go to the mattresses, No, I mean, look, theoretically, it's a beautiful idea. It's a beautiful idea. And then you need your consiglieres, you need people who can actually make it all work and pull people apart. And for something like this to work, tearing up the calendar, starting all over, and they were going to have to spend all kinds of effort. And then if they all walk away having compromised, if they all walk away dissatisfied, then we'll have a good tour. If everybody walks away aggravated, that's our only chance.
Okay, so Blair, I know that Blair wants to ask you on another hot topic. Before we move on from this, the thing that we asked our fans, we call it our YourServe segment, is what would you name said tour? And what would be the first issue, the #1 issue you think these 2 tours would have to figure out?
The name, I would probably name it Mongolio, just because, that's how I am. No, I would, no, you don't like that name? No, what would I name it? I'd have to think about what kind of, obviously it's got to be equal. And I'm not just talking about equal, which, the WTA has to stand strong. They've got to really, throw their elbows around and make sure that there's equal prize money, that it's consistently equal long term, not just short term, not just because Serena's still playing. And, they have to make sure that the TV rights are equitable, that the show courts, the women get the show courts the same way the guys do. There are so many things that that's my biggest concern, is that I think the ATP, there's a lot of savvy business people who've been there a long time and have been around and, have given, I think, more hip checks in the past than the WTA has, and for things. And it unfair me, but I tend to think that the WTA is a little bit too, something happens and then they say, well, we want a big Davis Cup type situation for Fed Cup, or we want, I really need them to be a very, very muscular, more than anything. Otherwise, I just don't know how much it's going to work. And we've known, look, you guys, we've all been around for a long time. There's been plenty of chauvinism in the past, plenty of, do you guys remember at Wimbledon before they finally knuckled under? It took the European majors, the French Open and Wimbledon, longer to come around than to the US Open, which was the first in Australia. But there was some guy at Wimbledon who said his excuse for not giving the women the equal prize money is because we need money for the petunias. Remember the petunia guy?
No.
Who was the petunia guy?
There was a guy who's saying, well, and hey, nobody loves a petunia like I love a petunia. But this guy's basically he was basically saying, no, is what he was saying. He blamed it on the petunias. So there's, and I have to ask you, Nick, because we both love figure skating. In figure skating, where there's men and women, and is everybody pretty much making the same kind of money and getting the same kind of, what's the figure? There aren't that many truly co-ed sports, right, guys? But figs, I've always thought, figs is, the women and the men are right in line with one another. Or am I wrong?
I believe I'm correct in saying it's equal prize money. And there's a lot of argument that you could actually say the women are a bigger draw. You've got bigger stars. I mean, Yuzu Rohanyu has changed that within figure skating. Blair's getting more figure skating knowledge here on Tennis
I love
Tuesday.
it.
We were talking about it earlier. But Mary, the pairs, the ice dance team, singles, they do get, and that ISU prize money has gone down over the years. The sport doesn't have as big of a reach. But yes, the ISU does give equal prize money. Yeah. Listen, we've taken up too much of your time. Blair and I wanted to get one sort of broadcast piece in this interview, and I'm always curious. I love your behind the scenes segments that you do for NBC for the Olympics, and I'm just wondering if you can tease us with one of those. Maybe you've already shot it, maybe you're working on it right now, but what's one golden nugget that you've been working on for Tokyo 2021?
Yeah, now it's Tokyo 2021. I spent some time in Japan last year. I went to Tokyo, Osaka, and Kyoto. It was cherry blossom. That's why we wrapped it around. We wanted to be there for cherry blossom season, which was magnificent. And I became a samurai in Tokyo. I'm great. I learned how to be a samurai warrior. So that's worth a couple of laughs probably. And I also learned in Osaka, I learned the art of sumo. Yeah. So there was a moment, and it's not going to make the piece because it was too ridiculous. I mean, you two know me enough to know, like, I'll go sideways on something just thinking, oh, this might be funny. So there's this huge sumo wrestler I'm sitting next to. We're at the their training table. Huge. These are mammoth people. There's just I've never seen people like this. And if you punch them, which they told me to do, you get pushed back because it's tight. Anyway. So the captain of this sumo team sitting next to him, and he's scarfing down all kinds. There's stuff bubbling. It looks like Hogwarts. Stuff bubbling everywhere, and rice. They're all eating. They eat 4 times a day, and they just keep, And this particular guy was probably about, I don't know, 375 and so very pleasantly, and we had my Japanese doesn't exist, his English. So I say to this guy, this huge guy, so, were you a big baby? Were you as a baby? Right? It's such a stupid question, right? So the translator looks at me like, what? I said, yeah, just ask him if he was, And so she asks him, and then he starts barking back, and they're having a very long, complicated conversation between themselves. I've clearly insulted this guy, And anyway, when it's all over, she looks at me and he says no. So I don't know. I thought it was a good question, just kind of a warm-up question, But
I like the question. I personally would wonder if it correlates with size later.
Thank you, Blair. I thought it was journalism. It didn't translate, I guess. So anyway, I miss doing those stories. I miss doing them. I hope everything's gonna happen next year. I don't know, man.
Well, we sure hope so. Mostly because we want to see this sumo story among other things. No, but I mean, you have just been somebody that we've been able to look at and learn from, which is something that we are so thankful for. I wanted to ask one more question on that. Is there anything that you look back on your early pieces that you did, early interviews, or maybe early matches that you commentated and think, gosh, I'm glad I fine-tuned that? Or is there something that you kind of had to work out of your system that you can look back on now?
I think it's a very interesting question. Richard Deitch from the media, he follows sports media. And he just emailed me the other day and said that he's asking a bunch of people, if there's one moment you could take back and do over again, what would it be? Which is a very cool question. My answer was not nearly as good as his question, but you think about that a lot. And what I was taught, I sat next to Pat Summerall, CBS, with Tony Trabert for many years. We got to call a lot of U.S. Opens, and he was such a minimalist. And a lot of producers I've worked with, they say, like, at the big moment or a match point, stamp your, go big and explain. And my inclination, because I sat next to Pat Summerall for so long, is you don't say anything. You just have a great director who cuts cameras and captures that moment. You don't have to explain, oh, the match is over, right? So okay, it's a visual medium. But I explained to that place that there was something I would take back. My first ever Olympics, you'll appreciate this, Nick, because you've been in a lot of those mix zones. So after an event, the host nation, Blair, gets, you know this too, the host nation gets the first couple of questions. And then whoever the athlete is, whatever the country that comes from, you get them next, and then they go down the line. So in Albertville Olympics, Winter Olympics, there was a terrific downhill racer named Hillary Lind. And she raced this big, bold race, and she won silver. And it was a big, so anyway, I'm at the bottom of the hill, and I've been told I get 2 questions. And there was some guy from MTV Sports who has changed my career. Have you ever heard of MTV Sports? No, because it lasted for about one afternoon with this like stoner dude. Stoner boy is at the bottom. He gets only 1 question. And it's not, it looked like perhaps he'd been smoking. So, anyway, and I'm all hype, over prepared, like you two always are. Like I know just what I want. God, 2 questions. So I do my questions, and then Stoner boy's chance. He gets 1 shot at it. Stoner boy, and Hillary's so happy she's going to talk to anybody. And he says, so Hillary, what do you think the downhill would be like if there was like no gravity? Great question. So Hillary, God bless her, like looks at him, and he's just going like this, and she looks back at him, and she gives it a think, and she says, well, I guess I'd just float away. And she like went with it, and Stoner boy is just here like, God, I crushed. Oh. And I looked at him, I didn't ask that question. Like, how did I not ask this? So that is the one thing, looking back, I would probably do over again. Is like, ask questions like that. You do what you can. I'm an old woman. I'm a grandmother now. No regrets. Just keep trying to push forward.
Oh, well, Mary, it's okay. You've made it through that Albertville moment. And listen, if we don't get to see the baby sumo moment, we know that you've got a new special baby in your life. So congrats on that, and thanks for hanging out with us on Tennis Tuesday.
Thanks, Mary.
Anytime, too, really, anytime.
Such a pleasure to have Mary with us. I don't know, I mean, I could listen to those stories. Just let me kick back, put my feet up. Mary can tell me stories all day long. So much fun. And she's actually not the only legend I have had the chance to speak to this week. I feel very thankful to the International Tennis Hall of Fame. They came to me and said they wanted to start a weekly check-in with a Hall of Famer. And we had our first one this past week with Stan Smith, who's also the president of the International Tennis Hall of Fame. We had a really great chat. Some great live questions came in as well, but we have a little clip of perhaps the crowning moment for me. This is not the most newsworthy moment, but the moment I got to show Stan Smith my Stan Smith.
I don't know. Everybody asked me that question, and maybe I should just give me 5 minutes. I'll go to my closet and count. But I think I've got about 80 or so. But I know some people that have a lot more of my shoes, which is surprising to me.
Yeah, well, that's a pretty solid collection, and I have to say it's taken me longer than I would like to be able to say this. But as of a couple of months ago,
wow,
I've got my own pair of Stan Smiths. I'm in possession. I got the Valentine's version.
The Valentine's one with the heart in the back. Very nice, buddy.
I feel much cooler now. And by the way, how nice is it that you never age? You have, this picture is going to stay the same for all eternity.
Yeah, well, we should turn the camera off, maybe. That'd be helpful.
Yep. So I kind of wish I had cleaned the heel off a little bit, Nick. A little dirt there on the bottom. But I mean, when else was I going to have the chance to do that? I had to go for it.
It shows, Blair. That's so cool you got to do it. And well done to you in the Hall of Fame for that show. I watched it last week. I'm excited for the shows to come. I think it showed, Stan, that you're wearing your Stan Smith. So I thought it was perfect.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Again, you can check that out. It's going to be a weekly segment, we hope, on Thursdays at some point on the International Tennis Hall of Fame social channels. Which brings us to our social channels, the hashtag YourServe question. We had a timely one this week, Nick.
Well, we're talking all things merger or potential merger. I loved Mary saying the urge to merge, the surge to merge. And we put it to you guys, what would the tour be called? And also, what are the issues? What would the main issue be to be addressed? The first thing you would say, and I love Mary shared with us that the whole the movie comparison and everything, it just worked brilliant. Our good friend Guy Tassel, he is one of the directors for Tennis TV for ATP Media. He says, how about Professional Tennis Association? Simple enough. And then Blair, I love that he connected it to PTA can double up as Parent-Teacher Association. I think there was maybe a little bit of double meaning there, right?
For sure. I think the tours need some hardcore parents, without a doubt.
I loved this one from Leon Thomas Braun. This is on Twitter. If they call it the WTP, you can drop the A from both names. They can still use part of the ATP logo, which is cool. And then Leon calling out wages, wage ratio, court scheduling, broadcasting. Look at all these issues. And that's something that Mary Blair, I think, was trying to be realistic with us about from being around the tours for so long, is that there would be a lot of issues here to discuss should the two tours come together.
Yeah, I mean, I know for me, I kind of already mentioned it. I would just love to see it, and Mary mentioned it too. Just even the tournament structure and some of the rules that go along with that. Just kind of getting both tours on the same page as far as that goes. It sounds like that might happen no matter what, which is great news, I think, for everyone involved.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Okay, this was one of my favorite responses of the week. I'm going with Slay TP. That is from our very own Blair Henley. Blair, I'm backing you on that name. And I like this here because I think you're being a little facetious. I'm confident I can rally the support needed to make it happen between now and a merger.
Yeah, I was being a little facetious, thinking who knows, I may have a couple of years to figure that out. But Nick, what about you? How do you feel about this?
I mean, I love the Slay TP name, and I'm backing you 100%. Was that your question?
Yeah, I mean, no, that's great. Is there anything, what would you like to see changed first?
Oh, yeah. I think, Blair, overall, a lot of what Mary brought up, a lot of what we saw on tennis Twitter, people talking about the concern with equal prize money. Obviously, at the tour level, we haven't seen that at a lot of events because of the different pay structures. And then I would just be concerned, you go to different events, and I think Indian Wells does it really well. I think the US Open does it really well, both tournaments where you and I have worked extensively. But some of these tournaments, the joint events, the women just get kind of pushed down and not marketed as well, court scheduling, that kind of stuff. So that would be the biggest thing to me, is that we are on equal playing fields because we are on one playing field.
That should go on a bumper sticker somewhere, Nick.
Let's go to a few more of our responses here. Bob on our Facebook page. Again, we're on Facebook at Tennis Tuesday. The merge between the two organizations would certainly help the smaller tournaments. Mary was talking about this, but could they get enough men and women to participate as the season is already so long? That calendar is really big. That's a fair point. And Bob is suggesting the WUTO, World United Tennis Organization, doesn't really roll off the tongue.
I like what he's going for, though. I feel like the Tennis United thing, I feel like the word unification united, that's definitely been thrown around, and it would be nice if that were kind of the forward-facing mentality behind this whole thing is we are one. So I like the sentiment. Maybe we need to work out the acronym a little bit.
Jess is suggesting the Tennis Professionals Association or the World Tennis Professionals. So 2 suggestions there. And then Jess also was bringing up the topic of bonus points for beating top players, which is something the WTA, I'm not sure if the ATP ever had it, but the WTA did have that for a while. Jess would like to see that back. And that was actually one of my favorite things. I think it was early 2000s, late 90s, when a lower ranked WTA player beat a top player. They got bonus points for that win.
We used to have that in Florida junior tennis. It was a big deal if you got one of those. I don't remember exactly what the line was, top 10, top 20. But yeah, I like a little extra incentive, a little extra, I guess weight. But although on the flip side, you wonder, does that then play into the pressure? So say we're tiebreak in the third and you're thinking, not only do I get to potentially beat this person, but bonus points.
Pressure is a privilege, Blair.
Thank you, Nick Jean King.
So you guys, thank you for your responses there. I will say I'm backing your Slay TP, but I just like the Tennis Association, TTA. I think it simply says, this is tennis, we're all together. So the Tennis Association would be my proposed name for the tours. I
like that. Nice simplicity, Nick. Way to go. We certainly need some after the past few months. We need that. And hey, you heard it here on #YourServe. Who knows what we'll see in the years to come.
So you guys, thank you for your responses on YourServe this week. And Blair, we've got another question for you guys for episode 12.
Yes, we do. We want to know, and I know that I have my answers to this. I'm curious if you all do as well. What part of your tennis fandom do people in your life just not understand? And I'm going to go for me. I mean, we'll talk about this on social as well, but most of my job, my friends and family do not understand. I tend to I have kind of a group text with my friends here, and I'll do, hey, do you guys know who X tennis player is? I kind of do test the temperature just to kind of see how people who are not in the tennis world, is this somehow seeping into their consciousness via Twitter or other social medias or TV? But most of my life, my friends and family don't get. So this is a big umbrella for me, Nick.
I would say for me, I love this, by the way. I think we're going to get some great responses. I would say I have a hard time explaining to people Fed and Davis Cup. I always say, oh, the women's team event, and then that leads to further scrunched, raised Rafa eyebrows of what are you saying? Furrowed brows. And then probably just the globalness of the sport, that I'll be waking up at 3 a.m. at one point to cover something for an article or on Twitter, but then at other times it is the US time zone. That confuses, especially a lot of my friends in New York are on Broadway and showtime's at 8 o'clock. It's not at 3 a.m.
Yeah, and this could be anything from, you guys, I don't know if we have any, major Serena fans out there. Maybe you wake up at all times of the night to watch Serena no matter where she's playing, or Venus or any of the other top players. Maybe they don't understand the photo collection you have in your home or the magazine collection or whatever it may be. I know we've probably all gotten the Rafa eyebrow at one point or another because of our weird love for the sport of tennis. Weird and beloved, I'm going to go ahead and say. But very excited to hear your responses. In the meantime, definitely make sure we'd love for you to like us on Facebook at Tennis Tuesday. As Nick said, you can watch us on YouTube now, and we're on Instagram, and we're hoping to have more and more interesting content for you there at It's Tennis Tuesday. So with that, Nick, we will see you all next week.
Bye, guys.